All right, I did my presentation on breastfeeding in the 21st century. I did this website for another class. I'm just gonna explain it a little more in depth for you now. The three topics I went over was the history of breastfeeding, the society's view of breastfeeding, and the ambiguity of breastfeeding. We'll first start with the history of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding goes back to the time of slavery and even before that into 1700 BC. The part that I found most interesting was the use of wet nurses, as seen here coming up next. That's when women nurse children that were not their own. And the sad reality of that was many wet nurses' own children died because they were being given to caretakers, and the caretakers were then feeding the wet nurses' babies formula. It's kind of sad. From there was the development of formula. Formula was highly advertised, which then caused breastfeeding to decline tremendously. And with that, there were some women groups that were formed that would support breastfeeding and tried to be advocates for that. From there, we kind of go into current day. In 2008, the Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act were put into place. In 2010 is when they made new laws for nursing mothers nursing mothers that went back to work. Companies had to give them the time to pump, and this is the sign that you can see in different businesses and local restaurants and malls and whatnot. I'll attach the link to the bottom of this page, and if you click here, you can actually go to the United States Department of Labor and check if your place of employment are under the qualifications of getting time to pump at work. From there, we'll go into the society. Many women are judged if they do not breastfeed and choose the alternative of infant formula. Or then again, they are judged if they breastfeed in public. And they are judged if they decide to breastfeed too long or not long enough. So that's kind of where I tied in my metaphor for our conceptual vet project. Breastfeeding is like choosing the right answer but still being wrong. In a world where people are judged all the time, I think it's very important for mothers to come together and to stick together and to support rather than to judge. I did find some information for kind of like the do's and don'ts of breastfeeding in public, just to know your rights, because women do have rights to breastfeed, and just do what's comfortable for you. Plan ahead, take care of yourself, be confident, and enjoy yourself. Don't bring unnecessary accessories. Don't sit in a place where the baby will be distracted. Don't nurse in bathrooms, and don't be rude. Even to this day, social status is a big thing. At the time of wet nurses, that was a time of social status, because if you could afford a wet nurse, it meant you had money. Now it seems to be that women that are more knowledgeable and have better resources are more likely to breastfeed. So then it's a sense of status. And then from there, we do talk about the social support of breastfeeding. That is one of the key factors of breastfeeding, because without support, it's hard to do much of anything. And people and women and mothers, they can get support from anywhere. I've read a lot of articles that said a father's support is one of the biggest support systems that someone can get. But there's also social networks that people can get on for support with women doing and going through the same things as them. From there, we'll go to the ambiguity of breastfeeding. And that's kind of how breastfeeding comes off as easy and simple, and people like to show that it's just all smiles, but when really it's actually extremely painful, as you can see on this girl's face. That's why many women are unable to succeed in their breastfeeding goals, because it hurts and it is painful, and they feel that maybe they aren't giving the nutritions to the babies that they so much need. So they opt to the alternative of instant formula. Although there are countless benefits for mother and child, such as for the child, they are less likely to have respiratory illness, ear infections, diseases, allergies. Rate of sudden infant death syndrome goes down tremendously. They're less likely to be obese, and even for mothers, they will lose weight quicker. It can be a contraceptive at mothers that breastfeed are less likely to give birth again in the first 9 months, or I guess get pregnant again rather. For mothers, they are less likely to get breast cancer, ovarian cancer, countless other diseases and cancers if they so too choose to breastfeed. The struggles of breastfeeding are real. I talked to many other mothers during this research, and they just said the pain was unbearable, and because breastfeeding is such a social standard, they felt like a failure and then went into depression. But because they were trying to breastfeed, they couldn't take medicines, which then led to them opting out of breastfeeding again. And last but not least, breastfeeding is not for everyone, and what I hope people took out of this was that support is great, even if people choose or not choose to breastfeed. Ultimately, it's up to them, and if their baby is healthy, that is all that matters. Thank you.